I think ACT is a way of having a Canadian-wide organization that addresses the needs of technology transfer and commercialization in Canada, and that spans universities, research hospitals, community colleges, polytechnical institutes, and I hope in the future government labs and agencies as well. The problems are common. We need to develop some synergy and best practices that we can share, and the communities can be too far apart and too dispersed to actually get real results. So I see ACT as a catalyst to be able to bring those individuals and those communities together to really improve the results for the country.
What is ACT? I think right now it's an organization that doesn't know really what it is. I think it's just too new. What I would love to see ACT become is the umbrella organization that represents anyone in Canada that is involved in the commercialization of early stage technologies coming out of, let's say, academic and research-based institutions. I think we would be remiss if we didn't include as many as we could possibly include under that umbrella. I think collectively we can do much more than being excluding certain sectors or certain types of institutions or organizations. So I'm in the camp, anyone that feels that they play in that sector, we should include them under ACT.
I see the role of ACT as being three things, really. First of all, I think ACT is the mechanism by which we can actually train people in the best practices of technology transfer and technology commercialization. And I hope that would lead to a certification of professionals in this sector, similar to professions like the CA profession or the legal profession, and that we would be a certifying agent. I also believe that ACT has an extremely important role to play in mobilizing the private sector and the industry sector to work together to the benefit of the economic development of Canada. And finally, I think ACT, and perhaps this is the most important role, has a role to communicate what is happening from the universities and the interaction with the private sector in terms of innovation and competitiveness, and make that information available to the Canadian public. I think we need to have showcases that show the great potential and the great impacts that we're having, and we should be doing that every year.
I think it has the opportunity to grow, to be more of a strong voice for the collective membership. I think it'll take a while for everybody to get used to how you use it as that voice, and in an academic environment where everything's open to debate, there will always be, not every view is exactly the same on how things should be done, and I don't think we should be trying to make a standard model for how tech transfer is done. I think we should more be having the discussion about how do we have the same common approach, in that we mean to provide value to our stakeholders, to industry, and all those sorts of things, and the mechanics of how it's done might be the interpretation of an individual place. But I think this should be the forum where we share our best practices, where we share resources, figure out ways to, instead of one organization doing something partly or one network doing something, that we can share the resources and get a bigger economies of scale for doing things across the country.
Well, I think our roles really rely or will revolve around providing some leadership and vision in the road and map forward. A lot of it will relate to networking, it will relate to training and education. It will relate to defining new metrics. It will relate to finding new methodologies for doing tech transfer and commercialization, encouraging pilot projects and programs, helping to evaluate those, and help to disseminate those across the land.
I think the next year's priority for ACT is basically to maintain the momentum that we've developed. We didn't start to run before we could walk, but we organized meetings before we actually had the organization in place, because we wanted to get moving. We wanted to show people that there were benefits in the kinds of things that we wanted to do in ACT, and I think we've come a long way towards convincing people that there's value in this organization, and we have to do whatever is necessary now to maintain the momentum and build the credibility of the organization in those respects.
Well, the easiest thing for us to focus on first is really getting the networking right and getting some of the educational programs together. By getting the networking right, we get the right people in the room. We also have to understand in the context of that how we want to interact with sister organizations, the Intellectual Property Institute of Canada, the Alliance of Angels, Canadian Venture Capital Association. Should we have representations and interfaces with those, as well as, of course, our originating association, the Association of University Technology Managers?
Well, the initial piece with I think we need to focus on is primarily the training piece in the beginning, so we get that up and running. The second part I would then focus on is the policy side, so trying to make sure that we have national policies that really support and encourage that interaction between the private sector and the public sector.
I think the main priority we've got at the start is continuing to grow the skill level within this community, so some of the training elements we've got. But I think the biggest thing is that connectivity, that connecting people to people piece that we're achieving with the annual meeting, and we will continue to do that. And then I think it will grow into being a forum for increased awareness with all the other stakeholders that we want to work with, so using it as a platform and a meeting place for those types of activities.
I think I would see a growing membership. I would see certification for participants in the sector, so professional designation that carries some weight and has some recognition. I'd see a willing coalition of a series of different groups and associations that see how by working together we achieve a greater goal. And I'd also look at the final output, which is more products, more technologies, more services, more social benefit that's really resulted from our collective activities. That's the true measure.